Hello and welcome to MCC TV International Show. My name is John Dabeet. I'm the Business Department Coordinator. I teach economics and statistics, and also I host this show. As I always say, every show is special because our guest on every show is a special guest. And today is no different. Today, my guest at some point in time used to be one of my students. She was a former student, but she became a co-worker. So me and her are working in the same place. Today, please welcome me, please help me welcome Elizabeth Medina. How are you, Elizabeth?
Pretty good, John.
Yeah.
How are you?
You see, it's fun to have you with me. Even I said welcome me instead of saying help me to welcome. So that's a good joke to start with.
Yeah, that's right. That's
okay.
Right.
Well, Elizabeth, I'm glad to have you on the show.
Yeah,
first of
absolutely.
all,
Thank you.
And I would like to basically talk to you. And let's start talking about growing up in Muscatine. Basically, we want our audience to learn about you, understand things about you, and all the way up until we bring you back to now your job here at MCC. So growing up, what it means to Elizabeth Medina today?
Growing up, well, born and raised here. Won't exclude. I won't tell you how old I am, but I've been here for longer than 20 years. I did have a little mishap where I lived in a suburb of New York City for about 7 months or so, but most of the time it was here. I think one of the things that I remember distinctly growing up is just being, and this brings it back to my culture, is being Hispanic in Muscatine, just because I feel like the way I was raised might have been a little bit different. So in my household, it was very much, I didn't speak English at home, spoke Spanish. So my mom would always say, in my house, you speak Spanish, outside my house, you speak whatever you want. Mm-hmm. So that in itself, growing up and going through the different variations of education and trying to learn English and things like that. Sometimes it got a little bit difficult, but the school system was really, really good with me, and especially like in my reading and stuff like that.
And this is really a good point, Elizabeth, because, you know, speaking more than one language can be a blessing, but can be also an issue too. So how did you handle that? So you are saying growing up at home, you have to speak Spanish, outside, let's say English. When you start going to school,
Right.
At an early age, whether it's kindergarten, first grade, second grade, as bilingual individual, tell me about advantages or perhaps maybe disadvantages, because I'm dealing, to be honest with you, I'm dealing with this myself because my kids, same thing.
Right.
They are growing up in a bilingual house and we cannot help it, but you know, we want them to speak both languages and so on. Obviously they speak 90% of the time English and perhaps maybe 10% Arabic, but what it meant to you?
I personally got very frustrated with my parents because I was trying to understand what everything else was going on around me. So I was trying to understand the native language here, which is English. And I guess growing up, I didn't understand why I needed to learn Spanish. Flashing forward 29 years, I just dated myself, but flashing forward, I couldn't thank my parents enough for just saying, you need to learn Spanish, you need to learn this. You know, ultimately, one of the things that I remember is my mom used to say and tell us that when we want to go back to Mexico, to their homeland, they're not going to cater to us in English. We have to know the language, and if we ever want to explore that, you know, that's something that I've always kind of had in the back of my head, and that's something that I'm keeping in the back of my head for, you know, for the future of when I have kids and things like that. That's something that I want to implement with my children. Is you have to also learn that I want you to learn English, but I also want you to learn Spanish, because your grandma and grandpa at that point, they know you have to know that language,
Yes.
and I want you to be kind of connected to that culture that way.
And I don't want to talk about being involved with MCC now and working at MCC as, by the way, MCC admission officers.
Right.
But I don't want to talk about it yet, but briefly, as an MCC admission officers, knowing a second language beside English, and in your case, obviously Spanish, but I mean, just in general language, knowing a language, how do you think this affect your job? Does it help you? I mean, especially, when you speak Spanish,
Right.
and for MCC living here, and we have a big Spanish community, I mean, it does, I assume, help you with your job, or am I wrong?
No, it does. It does. And I think it helps with that barrier with those students who have that language barrier, who want to come to school, who want to, whether it's earning a certificate or all the way up to, wanting to get their 2-year degree so they can transfer onto a 4-year. I think that helps a lot, especially with that barrier. And I feel good being able to be that one to say, yeah, let me help you get through that process and get through those steps and things like that. So
Great. So we go back, growing up, you went to school here in Musketeer.
Yep.
And I don't want to specify anything, but doesn't matter. Tell us a story. I mean, growing up, whether that story comes from first grade, second grade, third grade, or high school. A story that really, when you look back at it now, said, gosh, I'm really glad that, for example, I did this, or I went through this experience. So something like that.
Well, I have two.
Share them with us. Yeah.
So one of them I remember, I went to Hayes Catholic School. I must have been probably in first grade, kindergarten or so. And I remember this so distinctively, only because I remember being angry that I knew Spanish. So the story is that I was standing in line, and one of my instructors was standing in front of me. And I remember wanting to tell her something, and when I did, I said, "Hey," in English, and then the rest of my sentence was in Spanish. And she turned around and she looked at me like, "Little girl, what are you saying? Like, I have no idea what you're saying to me." So, and in that stage, I was like, I don't, why do I have to learn Spanish? And at that point, I was getting kind of angry with my parents. And then it wasn't until 7th grade where I did a lot of English talking. Back, and my mom would get so frustrated with me. She's like, "You need to speak Spanish at home. You're going to forget it, blah, blah, blah." And I was like, "No, I'm just going to talk English." And then one of the things that really hit me was that it's a great thing that I'm learning, both English and Spanish. Was in 7th grade, I actually ended up going to Mexico with my parents and my sister and whatnot. And I kind of lost it, to be honest with you. I lost some of my Spanish. And I was just in this world of, this is where my family lives. My parents migrated over here and came over here when I was young, and we're at a family. I have 4 siblings and my mom and dad, so it's just us here. And when I went back, it made me realize, this is where my family is. So for me, in order to keep in contact with them and in order to keep communicating with them as I get older, I need to stay true to my roots.
Yeah.
So I was just trying to
Did you have a culture shock, even though you said you were raised learning about things in your household? But did you still have a culture shock when you went?
When I went, yes. When I went to go visit, I was more so shocked at myself that I am in this place where my parents grew up, in their home city, and I don't really know the language that well, and yet people talk to me like I do, like I'm supposed to know it like that, and I'm like, wait a second.
Should be fluent, Elizabeth, right?
Yeah. So that was kind of a shock to me.
Yeah.
And it just made me, it made me then think rather than being so angry about it, I should be embracing it more.
Good, good. I'm glad to know that. Because, you know, things like that, trips like that can change our life forever. I tell my students, especially when we go on a study abroad program, when I take them to Jordan, which is because we have an agreement with the college in Amman, Jordan, I tell them before we leave, I say, you're going to learn more about yourself while you are in Jordan rather than while you are in Musketeer.
Absolutely.
And United States. And each one of us, most probably, at some point in time, needs to do that, needs to experience that travel abroad, so that we can learn more about ourselves. That is definitely true. Okay, so you finish high school, then what?
Then I didn't know what I wanted to do. I wanted to be this, I wanted to be that, and I'm like, I don't know what I want to do. So I came here. I actually took a semester off, and I started in the spring. And then I still didn't know what I wanted to do, so I'm like, I need to figure it out. Everyone else hasn't figured it out. Everyone knows what they want to do. They want to be a nurse, they want to be a doctor, they want to be a lawyer, they want to be an entrepreneur, and I have no idea. So one of the things that I really, really embraced about MCC, that I still embrace, is that I had the chance to explore different things. So I remember at one point I wanted to be a principal. And I was like, yeah, I want to be a principal. Like, I think I can do that and run a school and things like that. And I ended up taking a couple education courses, and I said, this is not for me. And then I went back to, I want to be a PE teacher. I can do that. And then I was like, this is not, no, I don't want to be a PE teacher. And I took a couple of year classes. I needed to take some micro and macro. So I was able to explore here, and that's what.
And that's good.
Yep.
And that's good. That's the idea, because I think the first 2 years in any student's college life, let's put it this way, has to be this way.
Yeah.
You don't want to select something and end up really feeling bad about it all your life. You want to find that niche, that field that you really say, well, I really can see myself in that area, and then shine. So okay, so you went to MCC, you graduated, then what?
So I kind of took a twist in what I wanted to do. I actually wanted to do fashion marketing. So I ended up going to New York to school, and I was there for about 7 months, and I loved it. I tell people all the time, I got to experience things that only people get to dream of doing. Like, I saw the lighting of the Christmas tree. I saw the things that they do, like prepping for the Macy's Day Parade. I got to meet a couple of celebrities while I was there. And just walking around Times Square and not being a tourist, but really feeling engaged, like if I, lived there. And it's beyond one of my better memories and one of my best memories. I love the city. Like, I love the city.
It's a beautiful place to be at.
It is.
I agree with you, because the city means a lot to me, because before moving to Iowa, I lived an hour from the city. So I was in the city at least three times, I would say, a week. So yeah. And then you decided to come back.
I decided to come back. I needed to figure out, since that wasn't for me, I needed to figure out what I needed to do and what I wanted to do. So then I ended up exploring a couple different schools, visiting and figuring out, okay, this school isn't for me, this one may be, and then finding one that really, really fit. So I ended up going to Western Illinois in the Quad Cities. I sat down with an advisor and I said, look, this is what I have, and I want to do everything. I want to do it all. And so we sat down and we kind of had a conversation about, okay, so, let's do this, this, and this, and you'll minor in this, and this, and this. And I'm like, yeah, okay, that sounds
That's
perfect.
what I want to do.
Yeah, that's what I want to do. Sign me up. So it was that easy. It was that easy. It took me that long to realize that that's what I wanted to do. And no, I went there and I traveled. I worked here in Muscatine. So still living in Muscatine and traveling up to the Quad Cities. I mean, it was a great experience overall. So.
Okay, Elizabeth at MCC now, but not as a student.
Not as a student. No.
As a coworker now for all of us as MCC admission officers. What does it mean to you, MCC now versus MCC before when you were a student?
So when I was a student, I was so engaged and focused on what I needed to do as far as figuring out what I wanted to do. Sitting back and looking at it now, I'm able to see that all the students have the potential to do whatever it is that they want to do. Whether that means exploring, taking a semester and just taking classes for fun that they just really want to do. I'm able to see now that you have those options here at MCC. I mean, the experience I had here really, I feel like, molded me into my next steps, into the next things that I wanted to do. Even though there were times where I felt lost, but and I think that's something that I can relate to students that come into my office and say, I have no idea what I want to do, but I also can relate to the sense of those students that come into my office and say, I know exactly what I want to do because this is what I want to do. Like
You went through it too, and that's
Absolutely.
a good thing, and I'm sure. When we are students, we go through all these kind of experiences. Then later on, we see others are going through it too, and that's the thing. So my next question is, because at MCC we do have students. I call them locally, but it's not necessarily just from Muscatine, but from the United States, let's say. But we do get students from other countries, international students. Can you explain to our audience the difference between the admission process for a student that lives in Muscatine, Iowa City, or even from Florida, okay, versus a student that comes to us from a different country as an international student?
So the process is a little bit more lengthy. Because your process application is you apply, then you fill out your FAFSA. We'll go through that. Then you'll send us your transcripts if you've gone to another place, so that way we can look at those transcripts. So you'll send all of that, ACT scores, and all of that package before we get you set up for orientation and get you signed up for your courses and things like that. For international students, the reason I say it's a little lengthy is because we need to have, for example, your transcripts. So, having, let's say, you're a student from Honduras, your whole transcript is going to be in Spanish. And even though I understand Spanish, that transcript has to be transferred over to English. So that way we can say, okay, so you've taken your English 1, you've taken your English 10, 11, 12, and so on and so forth. And then also we would need, if you're staying with like a host family, things like that, your finances, because unfortunately, financial aid doesn't, your FAFSA doesn't apply. So we would need things like that. The application process is also a little bit different. Also having your student visa, being able to apply, housing and things like that. So it is a lengthier process, but nonetheless, it's still easy. And building that relationship with those international students is very important to me, because as a student, I remember being in classes and I had I had people that were from Brazil, and I loved every minute of it. I was able to, learn a little bit about their culture and things like that, and also from Kosovo. And now on the backside of it, now I get to see that it wasn't easy for them getting here. I mean, it was, but it was just a lengthier process.
So as an admission officer now, let's assume you know that after you complete the process, the student got the visa, they come here. So what kind of relationship would you craft while there's international students here at MCC? Are you, what I'm trying to explain to our audience here, for example, do you need, for example, to report to any government agencies that they are here, they are taking classes, they are passing their classes, they are registering to take classes next semester, and so on? So is this like part of your job also?
Yeah, so the student will come here, and I like to have a conversation with them and meet them and say, welcome them here on campus, and just to get a feel as to what they aspire to be, and why they're seeking out their degrees here, because everyone has a story. That's my thing. Everyone has a story, and everything else, as far as like after registration, after they register for classes, everything else I take care of on the back end. So, I report to the government agencies that they're taking their courses. If they're wanting to, withdraw from a class, they would have to have a conversation with me about, why they're wanting to do that, just so I can know and kind of keep them in the loop and say, okay, if you're having problems, if you're having issues, we have services. Like we have the tutoring, where you can get help with your courses, and then we also have the writing center. There's different resources that we have here on campus that I want them to know that they can access just as much as a local student would have access to, and that just because they're from a different country, that doesn't single them out, that they can still tap into those resources. So I want to make sure that they know about those resources before they say, okay, I'm withdrawing from this class, and that's it.
Okay. And do you, you mentioned resources here at MCC, also for our audience. Can we just explain that briefly about all the resources that are available for any MCC student, as you said, whether they are international or local? I mean, they still can take advantage of those resources.
Absolutely. So on our campus, we have peer tutoring. So if you're struggling, if you're on that borderline between that A and that B, we have peer tutors that you can go in the Success Center. We also have. And
do they pay anything for it?
No, nope.
It's free
to them, right?
To the student, it's
absolutely,
okay.
And also the Writing Center. So if you're really struggling and trying to get an idea or try to form something, the Writing Center is there to also, if you just want to take a look and say, before I hand this in, can you kind of look over this and let me know, if I need a punctuation here or something like that. So the Writing Center is also there as well. Also students with disabilities. I mean, that's something that, our campus is accessible everywhere, and that's one of the things that I'm very, very proud of, that we've gotten to that stage, because that is, ultimately it's everyone's success. If it's our success, then it's everyone's success. So.
What do you think about students' involvement? Like, when you were a student, were you involved in activities, student groups, and so on? Versus now, what do you see? Do you think, like, if you just take what I would say, some sort of like an idea about, okay, well, when I was at MCC, students were involved or weren't involved, or versus now. So what do you see now?
So me, myself, my first semester and a half, I wasn't really involved because I was still trying to get the feel of it. I was still trying to mingle around and get the gist of what it's like. then I very much became involved. I was kind of loud and obnoxious, so I got in trouble a couple times. I don't think in your class, but I did get in trouble in a couple other courses that I had for talking too much. So imagine that.
I always welcome those people who talk a lot in my classes, because that what makes our discussion much better, right?
And I remember one of the instructors here said, it's funny. I walked by and you were sitting there, you were attentive in class. The next class period, it was like you were all over the place. You knew people. And so one of the things that I really, really encourage is student involvement. Because you get a say. I feel like you get a say here. And two, it doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like you're just coming to class and you're just doing homework and you're just getting the grades and then you're going home or then you're going to work and things like that. Student involvement really, really helps you evolve, I feel like. I was never really in a club here, but I was always involved in what they were doing. Like if they had activities and things like that, I would always go and I would always support whatever club was going on. It wasn't until after I went to WIU where I became involved. I was actually the vice president and the president of ALAS, which is Association of Latin American Students. So I got to see what it was like, being on the outside and also being on the inside of the club as well. And I always tell students, be engaged and be active on campus because you're going to make a huge difference. It does, absolutely.
It does make a huge difference. Elizabeth, as always, it's always good to hear your story. To me, I think, you are an inspiring person because, I know I work with you as one of my former students before, and I work with you now as my coworker. And I always see the big smile, the joke, you make people around you really like to be around you because you basically joke even though you are working, but you joke and you make that environment much better to work at instead of just being not happy or something like that. So thanks for sharing this. Thanks for sharing your story. Thanks for giving us and our audience information about admissions here at MCC and also the different types, whether it's locally versus international. So I would like to give you a minute to say whatever you would like to say, and then we'll end the show after that.
About anything?
Anything you wish.
Anything I wish.
Yeah.
Well, I just one of the things that I'm grateful for is just being here as a student and seeing what it was like for these students, and being able to relate to that helps that much more, and being more effective. And that's my thing, is that I want to be able to make that change for that student, and whether that's getting that certificate or getting, that transferable degree. MCC had a great impact on me, and now I want to be able to do that. I want to be able to do that in return. And not just for students, but for also, I'm a coach for basketball, boys basketball, and also for soccer at the YMCA. And I want to be able to help and implement that, and, it'd be, I guess,
that's
I don't know.
Great. That's great.
Be a good resource to these students.
That's what, this is one of the best things that any of us can do when we inspire others and make sure that we put them on what I call the path to success.
Yep.
That's, I think, the best thing that any of us can do. Elizabeth, thanks a lot.
Thank you, John.
For a great story that you shared with me and with our audience. And as I always say, every show is a different show. Every story is a different story. And I'm always glad and happy to bring those stories to your TV at home or at work or anywhere when you watch this show. If you have any question and or comments, please call me at 563-288-6064, or you can email me at jdabeet@eicc.edu. Till next time, Muscatine, bye-bye.